Who would have thought in this age of technology that a teacher with a piece of chalk could make an impact in the life of a child? Well, at Fowler, we have just that teacher, and her name is Mrs. Angela Smythe. Mrs. Smythe teaches 5th grade math at Fowler, and this is her story. Like so many of her co-workers and team members at Fowler, Mrs. Smythe always goes the extra mile to help students be successful. One day I overheard Mrs. Smythe in the hallway reminding our assistant principal, Mr. Dillard, that he needed to remember to unlock the building in the morning and not to be late. I was curious because the next day was Saturday and nothing had been said to me about something going on at Fowler. I learned from Mr. Dillard that Mrs. Smythe had been holding Saturday sidewalk chalk talk with the help of another Fowler teacher, Cindy Miller, and her own daughter, Megan. Mrs. Smythe invited 5th grade math students who were at risk of failing the tax to come to school on Saturday for math practice and objective specific help. Mrs. Smythe invited parents to participate so she could instruct them on how to help their students and to use the strategies when tutoring their own students. Mrs. Smythe used her benchmark and formative assessments and the results of those assessments to target each student in their specific areas of need. After splitting into groups, the students and parents went to work on the sidewalks around Fowler. The sidewalks around the entire 7 acres of Fowler's campus were covered with math problems and solutions. The students and parents took bananas and oranges and pizza breaks, and while they were having their break, they would discuss what they were learning and also where they were having problems and what they thought might be a problem on the tax test. Of the 13 at-risk students that attended Mrs. Smythe's Saturday Sidewalk Chalk Talk, all 13 students passed the first administration of the 5th grade math tax test with solid scores. And of those 13 at-risk students, 11 scored at the commended level. The thing that is so amazing is that Mrs. Smythe did this on her own without asking for compensation or recognition, and she held Chalk Talk for the same reason she holds chess club nearly every evening of the week after her tutoring sessions and even at 5 o'clock on Friday evenings. Mrs. Smythe held Chalk Talk for the same reason she sponsors Number Sense and the same reason she sponsors UIL math events. She did it for the students and to see them succeed. Mrs. Smythe is Fowler's Make a Difference teacher. Thank you, Mrs. Smythe.
In May, when many teachers were preparing for their summer vacation, we had a group of teachers from across the district that came together and taught summer school. This group of teachers, teaching 8th grade reading text, made a positive difference in kids' lives. This is their story. As junior high summer school principal, I had the privilege of working with some awesome teachers, particularly the 8th grade tax reading team. These 5 educators, Misti Spear, Erica Leopold, Brooke Whitworth, Gina Ayers, and Jane Gregg, epitomized collaboration. Junior high summer school in Wfisd presents a unique dynamic every year in the district. Middle school students from all 4 junior highs are combined to one campus for a few weeks to receive accelerated instruction. Many times these students' struggles go beyond just academic needs. Many have had issues with attendance and discipline, and finding ways to motivate these kids can be challenging. These 5 teachers revamped their schedules into a rotation that provided diversified teaching styles and allowed them to work with all the reading tax students, regardless of where their home school was located.
What do you get when you combine the amazing teaching talents of these ladies, my reading dream team? I knew these ladies were fabulous teachers, but they far exceeded my expectations this past June in summer school. For those of you that teach the SSI grades, you know that typically with each administration of tax, our passing rate tends to decline. And usually with 8th grade reading, we range somewhere between 12 and 20%. So we knew we had some room for improvement. This year we decided to do the schedule a little differently, and instead of one teacher being solely responsible for one objective, each teacher chose the objective that they felt like was their strongest area and created all lessons and activities surrounding that one objective. This really allowed teachers the ability to hone in and pinpoint areas of concern and allowed them some more time to differentiate in the classroom for their students.
These teachers went above and beyond to impress on these kids what it means to succeed. They took a holistic approach while targeting individual kids. They met outside of duty times at different places to formulate a plan not created just merely for kids that they work with during the year. 2 of these women, Mrs. Gregg and Mrs. Ayers, work at Barwise. 1, Mrs. Whitworth, is at Kirby, and the other 2 aren't even employed by junior high at all. Ms. Leopold is a teacher at Wichita Falls High School, and Mrs. Spear is the English Language Arts Curriculum Specialist for 3rd through 12th grades.
These teachers met at the Ed Center and developed lessons together to make sure that they were covering all the objectives sufficiently and that we were utilizing all the materials we had at our disposal effectively.
This team didn't see these kids and label them as Barwise kids or McNeil kids. They didn't reshuffle their classes only to see the kids they had during the year for instruction. What they saw were kids that needed help in reading, no matter what school they called their home. They took the relationships they had already built and used those to build new ones, whether this meant going to summer league basketball games, communicating with parents, or simply adjusting to the students' changing needs.
So what was the result of these endless hours of preparation, the differentiation in the classroom, the relationships that they've built with their students, and the new schedule in summer school? A 40% passing rate on the third administration of 8th grade reading TAKs.
The passing rate of these 8th grade TAKs reading students doubled over previous year's average passing rates in summer school. These teachers gave these kids a chance and made them believe they could control their own destiny. I attribute this increased success to these 5 educators' willingness to check their egos at the door and say, these kids are not from this school or that school. They said, for the next 3 weeks, these kids are my kids, and I'm here to do what it takes to make these kids successful.
Thank you so much for making a difference in the lives of your students.
Thank you for making a difference in the lives of students at WFISD.
Here at Sam Houston, we have been blessed with an extraordinary educator. Our Make a Difference teacher is Carol Stegner. Carol teaches 1st grade and has made a difference in the life of a child. This is her story. A little girl was in Carol's 1st grade classroom during the 09-10 school year. And most little girls, especially 6-year-olds, have a mommy to brush their hair. And they have a mommy to play dolls with and a mommy to bake cookies with and rock them to sleep and do all the girly stuff. But this little girl didn't. This little girl's mommy, for some reason, chose to leave her when she was just a baby. So this little girl's being raised by her dad and a grandfather and an uncle. So there's no female influence. Poverty is just a part of her world, and illegal activity surrounds, the dysfunctional family. But one good thing that she does have going for her is that she's very, very smart. And Carol recognized that talent and all that gift that this child had and just fell in love with her. And they bonded instantly, and the child blossomed in grade 1. Carol said she's a natural-born leader and very bright. There were no issues when the little girl was in grade 1. Then the 2010-11 school year rolled around and the little girl moved to grade 2 as a top student. But Carol continued to teach grade 1 as she had for many years. And the child started out the year in grade 2 doing well. Then around November, things started going downhill in a hurry. She was bullying other children, and she was hitting kids during PE. She was talking back, and she was making many trips to the office for discipline issues. Her grades started to go down. She was isolated to a desk by the teacher, away from her peers because she couldn't get along with them, and she was not focusing on academics. The 2nd grade teacher tried many things, tried rewards and then punishments. And I talked to the father, who had just recently been released from jail and had lost the only vehicle that the family had. And he just assumed that her actions were caused by the home life. And I talked to the little girl and I tried to find something that would motivate her to return to the behavior that she had had the previous year. I was offering iPad time and Happy Meals and Be My Helper, but to no avail. There was just no change. So I went to Carol, dreading to ask an already overburdened teacher to take on another task. But I was desperate, and so was the 2nd grade teacher. And I asked Carol, if this little girl can just stay out of trouble for one day, could she come spend 15 minutes with you? I know she loves you. And Carol eagerly agreed. But then I started hearing from other staff members that Carol had taken it to the next level. Carol had spoken with the father and asked could she spend some time with the little girl on the weekends. And of course that father had agreed. So Carol's plan had already been in place without me even knowing it. Carol was picking up the little girl in her own car on Saturdays, and she had taken her to her own home and they would bake cookies. And then they would go to the mall, and the little girl had never been to the mall. And they would just ride up and down on the Dillard's escalator. Carol went to the dollar store and they would buy a loaf of bread and just go feed the ducks. On her next outing, she would bring her to school on a Saturday and help her organize her classroom to get ready for Monday. And Carol took her to get some new spring clothes with some matching bows. Carol gave her time to this little girl, and the little girl's behavior improved dramatically. The grades were back up, they were blossoming, and the little girl was back. Then one day, Carol came to my office with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Am I doing an injustice to this precious little girl? Because reality is, in a one-room, smoke-filled, impoverished house, it's not with me. What have I done?" Carol asked. "Carol, you've shown this child she's beautiful on the inside and out. You've boosted her self-esteem, and you've shown her that an education is a way out of the generational poverty cycle. But most importantly, you have given her hope, and you have proven she's worth something to someone, and she has the power to become a strong, independent woman to make it in a cruel, heartless world. You are her female role model. You are her hero, and for that, no, there's no injustice here." Thank you, Carol, for making the difference in the life of a child.